it could unlock something for you that will take you and make you a better player and give you a chance to play at the next level. And I would tell them major league players lean on these people. So I
Yeah.
think that part of the game is something that's not as developed, and the guys that are great will tell you that they're not afraid to.
Arteaga drives one to center. Miller hustling over. Diving catch by Ian Miller. A great catch.
3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 9-Hole Podcast. This is Ian Miller. I am joined by an extremely special guest, Chip Hale, the head coach for the Arizona Wildcats. Coach, how are you doing? What's going on?
Ian, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Always excited and love to talk baseball.
I love it. I love it. So I'm fired up to kind of run you through a bunch of questions. Obviously, you have experience, not just in the major leagues as well, but success kind of on both levels, right? So you've experienced, obviously you were 17th round draft pick. Played with the Twins and the Dodgers, right? And so you were a College World Series champion. You kind of have experience on both sides of the equation. So that's a unique point of view. Would love to get your take on some stuff. Obviously, the 9-Hole Podcast is aimed at the next generation of underdogs. Would just love to get your feedback, some insight and stuff. But first, just a little background on you, right? So you had a plethora of different spots, right? Third base coach, bench coach, you manager, 2 seasons. That's insane. What was that like, man? What was like the grind getting to there? So obviously you played a little bit.
Right.
How did you get there?
I think it's a really interesting one. I love the question because playing obviously is the grind, as you know. Trying to get to the big leagues is everything, and you have a very unrealistic idea of how it's going to go when you sign. Right? It's like, okay, I'm going to be in rookie ball, A ball, double A, triple A. I'll probably skip one of those and be in the big leagues in 2 or 3 years.
That's right.
And so I was very blessed out of the draft. As you said, I was not a high priority guy. Back in 1987 when I was drafted, there was no internet to go to. There was nowhere to check the draft. I got a call on the 3rd day of the draft from the Padres, and they said, "We're going to draft you today. Will you sign for this much?" I said, "Of course. I'm a senior in college. I want to play baseball." And they never called back. So the 3rd day went by, and I basically was at my parents' house. They were living in Hermosa Beach at the time in California. So I was sitting there contemplating, okay, I have my degree. Where am I going to go interview? And Procter & Gamble had called, so I was going to go to Indianapolis and interview with them. And sure enough, I was sitting there getting ready for the day. I was going to go for a run or something on the beach, and the Minnesota Twins called out of nowhere. And I'm like, what's going on? They're like, well, listen, we drafted you in the 17th round. We're going to give you $5,000, and we need you in Kenosha, Wisconsin tomorrow. You're going to go to the Midwest League, which, as you know, it's great to go to a full season A team right out of the draft. And I was a college 4-year player, had a really good career here at the U of A. So I was like, okay, sure. And I'm like, is there any negotiation on the money? They're like, no. I'm like, okay. And so Jesse Flores come over, signed a contract that night, was at LAX the next morning and off to Kenosha. And obviously I was lucky. I went Midwest League, Southern League, and then 5 years in the PCL, and, a little bit up and down in Portland, Oregon, but really didn't make it till 93. So there was a lot of times, Ian, in that 4 or 5 year period in AAA that I thought about, saying maybe I need to go back and do that interview with Procter & Gamble, because I was starting to have kids and it was getting tough on the family. But luckily I had a great wife, and my wife, Judy, just said, hey, just stick it out, make them rip that uniform off you. So I was lucky. But moving on to the other question, you start that all over again as a coach. You have that big grind as a player. And then I'm like, I really like to coach. And my wife at the time of our marriage was like, listen, I have no problem with you going to try to be a Major League Baseball player, but I don't think you should. I don't want to be the coach's wife deal.
I get it.
I think you need to, we'll move on to a 9-to-5 job. I said, no problem. And then so that was probably the biggest negotiation of me getting into coaching.
Wow.
Just talking to the wife, and she was so great about it. But it was even a tougher climb. Obviously, 2 years in Missoula, Montana, 1 year in El Paso in Double A, and then I became the infield coordinator for a year. And then I was really lucky to get the AAA job here in Tucson. At the time, the Diamondbacks were in Tucson, Arizona. We live here. It's where we've always lived. So for 3 years, I got to sleep in my own bed as a manager, and
That's
then
big
got the
time.
chance to go up the road to Phoenix for with Bob Melvin, and spent those years until 2010, and went to the Mets in 10 and 11 as a third base coach. Then over to the with Bob when he went back to the A's, Oakland A's, which I grew up in the Bay Area, so it was a great turn for us. Was a bench coach for Bob in 12, 13, 14, had great years, made the playoffs, and then got the job with the Diamondbacks in 15 and 16. Got let go. As you know, in Major League Baseball, you can't have much of an ego because you do get let go and released a bunch. So I went back to Bob in 17 and was the third base coach half the year, bench coach half the year, and then went to the Nationals. It was kind of a career decision for me, Ian, because at that point it looked like the Nationals had a better chance to win. I wanted to win a World Series, and sure enough, in 19 we did. So I was bench coach there till 18, 19, 20, and then 21 went to Detroit with AJ Hinch to try to get that thing back and going the right way, and was blessed enough that the U of A job came open and I got it. So that's where we are today.
Absolutely love it. That fires me up. So you won a College World Series, right? 1986. You progress, through the minor leagues. You start coaching. You enter coaching. Start all over. Work your way up various positions. You get let go, and you eventually become the bench coach. You win a World Series, man. So it's like there's a little bit of that underdog story in there, kind of in everything, right? That's
Right.
what it's about, man. So not like nothing was handed to you. You had to go out and earn everything, right? Just like every one of your student athletes kind of has to earn every single rep. It's I'm back-to-back NCAA tournament championships, right? So you're entering your third year as head coach. I'm
Right.
interested in how does that kind of what you've learned, what you've experienced through pro ball, your whole journey, right? How does that translate into these college athletes? Like, how does that help you coach these young men?
Yeah, I think that's I always say this, that the minute I forget how hard the game is the minute I need to get out of the game, get out of coaching, because that's the problem. Is so many guys get back into the coaching side of it and they forget how hard this game is. You know what I mean? It's not an easy game. As we always talk about, it's a game of failure. And that's the one thing we talk about on a daily basis. But coaching them, it's they're all great human beings. When we recruit them, we recruit that first. We want to get a good kid. We want to get a good family here to the U of A. But it's no different than coaching a guy that's Juan Soto or Bryce Harper or these major leaguers that I've coached over the years, Paul Goldschmidt, those guys like that. Um, if those are easy guys to coach because they're such good people that you just have to keep them kind of moving in the right direction. There's not a whole lot of coaching that they
Yeah.
need anymore. These guys now, this is like going back and doing rookie ball all over again. That's the fun of being back in college. And one thing, when I worked for Tony La Russa, one of the things we talked about all the time is every year, and it's almost twice a year here because we have our fall program, and now these guys are gone. They're done with their finals next week. They'll go back to their homes and come back in January 10th to start again. You always have to start at zero. It's like going to spring training every year. You have to teach the pitchers how to pick up a bunt, and it seems so menial to them. I'm like, come on, coach. But if you don't start at zero every time you get the kids back together, it's hard because you can't assume that they remember, number one, or they've ever learned it if you've never had them before. So I always try to get to that point when we start and just keep building on that. And as we know, baseball is a game of repetition. I'm an infield coach at heart. So it's based on a lot of repetition and drills and the same drills and getting these guys better with their feet and in their hands. And then comes the things out on the field, the pre-pitch and all those things. So that's how we kind of build it up to starting games.
Oof, That's fantastic. I love that. So in your second year at the helm, right, 2023 last year, your offense finished first in the Pac-12, batting average, slugging percentage, doubles, triples, and extra base hits, top 20 in the country in batting average, doubles, hits, runs, slugging percentage, and triples. I think I left out like triples per game. I didn't even have enough room to kind of write it all down. What's the offensive philosophy? What are you teaching to these kids? I call them kids, young men. What are you teaching to these young men to make them so just dominant at the plate?
Yeah. Well, number one of the coaching, Toby DeMello is my hitting coach. Does a wonderful job. And I was so lucky to get him. When I got the job here, I had some people in mind. Toby sent me his resume, went and looked at him, talked to him up in the Bay Area. He was at Sacramento State at the time. And just his whole background in hitting and teaching. And obviously, I needed a catching coach also.
Oh yeah.
And then Tyler Coolbaugh, who was our player development coach, um, those two really spearheaded our offense, and it's a very progressive way of coaching and teaching. We teach these guys how to be professional hitters, is what it is. It's not a college spread out, get on top, hit ground balls. We want the ball in the air. That's where these kids will make money in the future. It's not necessarily home runs. It's not necessarily high fly balls. We want line drives like it's as old school as new school, right?
Yeah.
But we do not teach guys to the pull side to hit ground balls. That's just the way we teach. And Toby's really good with them. Tyler did a great job on the player development side of it in getting the plans out. So I really put it on those two guys. I mean, I'm there. I'm saying this and that, but they're the ones who are in the cages every day. Toby's the one doing all the drills with them, and Tyler was getting those game plans together for the different pitchers. So I wanted it this way. I want kids to come here and be able to have a chance to play at the next level. Are they all going to be major leaguers? No, we know that, and that's why the degree is so important. But we also want to give them the best chance when they sign. So it's really that sort of thinking, and it's not one way of doing it. It's tailored to everybody's physical abilities.
Oh, that's big, right? So you touched on Toby working with the hitters, doing the in the cage stuff, some offensive maintenance, hitting coach type stuff. That was an ex teammate of mine. Obviously, got us in contact with each other. I am grateful for that. But Toby is he was my roommate my first year of pro ball, and I learned some things from him that I incorporated throughout the entirety, not only of my like professional career, but through my minor league career, right? Like kind of, how to be a good teammate, what a leader kind of looks like, how to act around people, how to carry yourself, and how to be a professional. So that's big time. That I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? It translates,
Yeah,
obviously,
no,
to success.
he does a wonderful job, and you brought up a great point. Is we talked about failure, and he's really positive with these guys. Um, and when they have to be, scolded or told what they need to do better, and they're not doing it, he can be as hard. He can coach them as hard as they need to be coached. But he has a great idea of each player's ability to handle that, and who needs what, who needs a kick in the butt, and who needs a pat on the back.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. How are the intensity? How is the intensity of your practices? So it's like we've been hearing things about not training to fail, but obviously when you tune up, the level of your practice, you may tune up the level that you perform on the field when it's go time, right? How
Yeah.
how do you train like that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I that's how I was brought up. That's interesting you say that, Ian. In my high school coach back at Camp Lindo High School in Moraga, California, it was terrifying to practice. It was he was a football mentality guy, and if we lost, we just ran the next day.
Yeah.
But when we went to practice, we competed at everything. I mean, he'd just whale ground balls at us. And as you know, high school fields aren't as good as college or pro fields.
Mm.
So we took a lot of balls off the chest and off the head.
Yeah, I bet.
So what we try to do here is we, with the time that we're allotted by the rules of college baseball, we try to compete all in everything we do. Whether it's BP, we'll form teams every BP and have like a Masters or something like that where we have competition, like a golf competition. It's almost like we'll pit people against each other. We have what we call 2-strike Tuesdays, which Toby will set the machines. He'll have one shooting from the ground up. He'll make it almost impossible pitches to hit. 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, 88, 89-mile-an-hour cutters. Just because we're trying to make it harder than it would be with an 0-2, 2-2, 3-2 count to battle and put the ball in play. We're not trying to get a hit every time. We're trying to extend the at-bat, right?
Yes.
So it's like, hey, you got to touch this. If you don't, you're out. It's 3 pitches minimum. And if you miss one, you're out. Next guy in. And we have 4 cages all set up like this with the music is turned up as high as we can get it without blowing our speakers out, with stuff they don't like to hear. Might be some old school rock and roll that we're used to, but just anything to make it harder on them on that day. So we try to compete, and our pitching guys do the same thing. But on the hitting side, we do it more and more. We have a new group this year. Part of the reason for those great numbers, like you talked about with Toby and Tyler, like I told you, they did a wonderful job. But we had really good players. We inherited a really good group from Jay Johnson, who's now at LSU. He recruited some great players here. So we feel like we finished them off. We were the finishing score for them.
Oh, yeah. No, I love it. I love it. So obviously training at that type of intensity, that type of level is probably going to mold these young men into performing at that type of level, on Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, whatever that is. So defense, talk a little defense. Obviously you were a middle infielder and you were pretty darn good at what you did. Obviously 977 fielding percentage, ranked second in the Pac-12. Obviously what you're able to kind of convey to these young men, teach these guys, is transferring over to game time, right? So are you incorporating drills, ideas, thought processes, however you say it, from your time, playing and coaching in the big leagues? Is that kind of where you've learned what to throw at these guys, or are you kind of, are you learning everything as you go, right? As it pertains to, the NCAA level?
Yeah, I think kind of both. I think you always learn from the people you coach with. I played for one of the greatest infield coaches ever, was Jerry Kindle here at the U of A. He taught us a ton of stuff that I've used today. Bobby Dickerson, who's now with the Phillies, who's a wonderful infield coach. He's now the infield coach in the big leagues, but he was our infield coordinator when I started managing with the Diamondbacks. Ton of drills from him. Ron Washington stuff. Always watched him and try to incorporate that kind of stuff. So I've been around a ton of really good infield guys. Again, just like the hitting stuff, we have our core things that we do every day. We do our knee fungo stuff that we start with every day. But everybody's different. As you know, Ian, some guys have really good feet already when they show up here. Some guys don't. And I'm never going to tell a guy, hey, you have bad feet, go to the outfield. Because I even think first basemen have to have good feet. So we work on that. We team with our strength and conditioning group right from the start. We get a lot of assessments, whether it's on the hitting stuff or the fielding stuff. And then we try to make them better all fall. We try to give them their feet better. Because I'm a true believer, if you don't have good feet, it's going to be tough, especially playing in the middle of the infield. I think good feet, the best feet I've ever seen as a player or coach was Omar Vizquel. He was phenomenal.
Ooh.
And he could almost field. I remember in Venezuela playing against him in winter ball, he could almost field without even a glove on, because he could get himself in such good position. So we try to do those things. And I think I try to learn as much as I can from the kids. I had a great infielder here that we inherited, Nick McClary.
Yeah,
was kind of our leader on the field. He'll end up being a big-time coach someday when he's done playing, but he's with the Padres now. And he had a lot of good stuff, too, that he had learned at Sac City, which he had learned in high school that Tyler and I, because Tyler Kuba helped me with the infield also. So we try to learn from each kid. If you're not learning, then you, like I said before, you're dying.
Yep, staying stagnant.
Yep.
So your program, right? So one of only 4 programs in the nation to have first rounders back-to-back years, 2022, 2023. That's insane. Obviously, an incredibly small number. Why is that?
Okay, so let me go back one thing about the defense, about anything you do in baseball. If you don't practice it and show that as a coaching staff you care about it, then the kids aren't going to care about it.
Mm,
Right. Or whether at the pro level, right? I was infield coordinator for a year. And when I go into a city, I made it very clear that this organization values this because they'll go, as you know, kids will go in that cage and they'll hit all day.
yeah.
When I start getting guys coming to me or coming to the managers because we can't do it because of time, hey, can I get somebody to hit me extra ground balls at this, after practice? Then I know we're doing our job because they care about it. So we try because when you talk about defensive numbers like you talked about, and we being so high in the rankings, that means your pitching staff has to be good at those things too.
Ooh,
PFP, we do try to do team PFP twice, two or three times a week, incorporating the pitchers and the infielders together. Because as you know, if you don't know how your pitcher can move on the mound, you're not going to be able to help them out as a defender. So we try to
amen.
do that a lot. The first rounders, we are very blessed to have Dan Susak and Chase Davis both be first rounders. Now, again, they were recruited by a different coach. We inherited them. We were very lucky to inherit them. Dan was going to be a first round pick, whoever coached him. This
Gotcha.
guy is a great hitter. He's learning still to catch. He's 6'6". It's not easy.
Yeah.
He's getting better and better now at the pro level. He's up to AA. We just tried with both these guys, especially Dan, because we only had him 1 year, was to give him what we knew about the pro game as much as we could to educate him. Now, remember, his cousin, his older brother is a major leaguer, caught in the big leagues, caught on a World Series team. So he was well ahead of the game.
Yeah.
It was, and I always say when I got here, it was like he was already an A-ball. To be
Gotcha.
honest with you. In the mind. Physically, he needed work, but in the mind. And he's going to be a very successful pro. Chase was a completely different side of the coin. He came here as a freshman before we were here and didn't play. He didn't play on a really good team that went to College World Series. And it's very odd for a first-round pick as a junior not to play as a freshman. He had 50 or 60 at bats, which is not a lot. So his sophomore year, Toby did an unbelievable job because this is a great athlete. This is a physical guy that's a beast in the weight room, squatting, anything, cleaning, all the lifts. And we took that athleticism and made it pay for him with the bat. I mean, this guy was very, very dangerous. If you watch him hit, he looks like Carlos Gonzalez. But it took a lot of work, and I put a lot of that on Toby. In fact, Chase came back after not having the greatest summer in instruction league. And in one session, Toby had him back to where the ball was jumping off his bat. So it's a guy that's going to take constant work to get to the big leagues, but he has the physical tools to make it there. So the mental side of it for him was really important with Toby, with myself, just the grind. And that's going to be, and as you know, we do our best we can to prepare him. Let's see how it goes from here.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So, I mean, the back half of that question, you kind of answered it. I was going to ask something else. I was going to ask what separates your program from everybody else in the country. Obviously, like the mindset, before, not to cut you off, but the mindset thing, just right there, right? Kind of instilling that pro ball, all that information that you've accrued over your career, right? Instilling that into your young men and trying to get them to the next level. I don't know if everybody else is doing that, right?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I just think, I think it's there's no pie in the sky. Like, hey man, it's gonna be easy. You're so good. You're just gonna get. It's a grind, man. And we try to let them know that. We bring all the the scouts from the Four Corners here in Arizona. A lot of schools, sometimes they'll be like, hey, we don't want you around our players. And, you got to schedule these meetings. I tell them anytime you want to meet with our players, our offices, all you can use my office. I want them to be around as many people that can influence them to be major leaguers.
Love it.
because if they're able to do that, I want to give them every opportunity to do it.
That makes a ton of sense. That's awesome. I love it. Let's move on to the recruiting side of things. Obviously, you guys have a ton of top tier talent. What are you looking for when you and your staff are recruiting? Maybe a guy, not only in high school, but obviously the portal is pretty relevant now, right?
Yes.
Transfers can come in left and right, so obviously those things expand. What are you looking for in a recruit to come play for Arizona?
Well, obviously, we're looking for talent. I mean,
Yeah.
they have to be very talented. We're going up against everybody in the country. We bring recruiting's kind of gone back old school a little bit. We can't talk to kids now until the August of their junior year.
Okay.
When I first got here, we were committing kids um, that were just leaving eighth grade, going into high school. And now you're projecting. We should be a little more exact in our science now of who we end up committing here. We've had kids who we committed as freshmen that decommitted from us because they wanted to try something different, and we've
Mm,
had some when they get to their senior year that didn't improve enough. So
got
we
it.
have to tell them they need to go and look for another spot because they wouldn't be able to compete at this level. So I'm glad that we have this new window, but we're bringing kids in on visits and their families, which is kind of the way we were all recruited in my era.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of fun, but it's gotten tougher. I mean, it's obviously recruiting coordinator Trip Couch has been doing this a long time. He's done it at the scouting level in the pros for 10 years. He's been at big schools like University of Houston, South Carolina, Texas, and now he's with me. So I always joke around like, hey, when Trip goes to see a kid, it's like every school in the country is calling the kid the next day. So, um, we recruit. We're not going to stop recruiting against the. We know the Southeast Conference has probably more money in this whole NIL era that we're
Yeah.
in now. So we just have to get 15 good ones.
Yeah.
And Ian, to be frank with you, we won a College World Series in 1986. There was a lot more pro prospects and big league prospects on the other schools in the Pac-12, or at that time the Pac-10, than our school. We've always been kind of a grinder. If you look at grinding school, if you look at our alumni, we have a ton of guys who coached and managed, Terry Francona, guys like that, Brad Mills. That so Coach Kendall and Coach Lopez, Coach Stitt, who've been here before me, they really look for a workmanlike player that's going to work their tail off and get better. So as long as we can get guys with that mindset, we're going to be fine.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you traits and stuff like qualities of those young men. You just answered it,
Yeah,
right?
I would also say, Ian, that they have to be good students. In today's era of 11.7 scholarships, we're trying to make the money up with some NIL stuff, and the kids having opportunities to get that from the collectives. But there's a lot of money out there in academic scholarships. So we have one of our students who's going to be one of our best pitchers this year. He's probably going to pitch late in the game for us, but he gets a ton of academic money. He was got a perfect ACT score. He has not got anything below a 96, 97% any class in 2 years here. So those are the easy ones to coach.
It's incredible.
There's a saying, we're off campus. We're over here at High Corbett now. So we say, hey, if you do well on campus, you're not going to have a problem over here on the field. If you don't do well in the classes, it's going to be tough here. It's just it's the mental part of it, as you know. It frees you up to be a really good player.
Ah, fantastic. Love the answer. Makes a ton of sense. I was going to ask, what's a disqualifier when you're going to see somebody, but I kind of want to make that a little bit broader, right? So obviously you're coaching amongst some of the most talented baseball players, at the NCAA level, the college level. What do you see in your competition, right? Or you're coaching against somebody, obviously like showboat and home runs is big nowadays, right? It's big to show emotion. I get it, man.
Yeah.
What would you see in somebody, maybe on an opposing team that would make you be off on that guy or be out
Yeah,
on that guy?
Yeah, that's a man. I think now I'm as old school as it gets on hitting a home. Put your head down and run around the bases. But hey, man, it's all part of the game now. There's not a whole lot. I mean, selfishness would be one that would turn me off.
Yeah.
Um, Showing up your teammates would be one. I don't like that. And does are our guys perfect? No, no. We have to have our talks with our guys, or pitchers throwing their hands in the air when you make an error, right? It's not fun. But they're also 17, 18 to 20, now 23, 24 year old kids. So they're not really developed in that way yet. So obviously, we want good kids, we want good families, and we try to recruit the best. Um, our second chance is allowed, of course, man. Kids screw up. We all made mistakes in our life, and I'm willing. If I feel like if I recruit somebody and I bring them here, and I hope I've learned this reading Mike Krzyzewski's book. I should be able to look him in the eye and know if he's telling me the truth. If we recruited him and we had these, especially when you have a kid, we have two kids on my board I'm looking at over here that are 26s. So they were before the rules changed. So we're going to know these kids for a long time. So
It's
we should
awesome.
know these kids pretty well when we bring them here.
That's big time. I just wanted to ask you a couple questions about the things you've learned, seen, experienced along your journey. Coaching obviously at the highest level, winning the biggest trophy in the game of baseball, being a World Series champion, and experiencing the College World Series, all that stuff. Winning the College World Series, man, that's incredible. So along that whole journey, talent level wise, man, how much crazier is it being in the big leagues, being a top tier athlete in the big leagues, as opposed to being a top tier, collegiate athlete? What's that level gap? What's that talent gap? Obviously, it might be tough to, kind of explain it, but you've lived it, you've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's obviously the greatest players at the major league level. Um, there's just a special level of talent. Somebody asked me the other day about Juan Soto and why he has such great um, plate discipline.
Yeah.
And I said, well, number one, he's always had it. He's always had that since he was first signed. And I do attribute that to just eyesight. He probably has, like Ted Williams. Ted Williams would say stuff about hitting that you kind of go like, what? Like Rod Carew once told me, I was with the Angels as a player in spring training, and I'm like, man, Rod, I can't hit this pitch. It's that one outside that the umpire calls a strike, and I can't really reach it. And he just would say, well, just foul it off. And you like, for you and me, it's not that easy. He was such a gifted and talented hitter that he could just kind of flip it over the third base dugout.
He taught me how to
Um,
bunt.
yeah, yeah. I mean, probably the best bunting coach I've ever had. But yeah, there's just that next level. Now, those are your, as we say in pro ball, what do we grade on a 1 to 8 or 8, 10 to 80. They say 80s are Hall of Famers, right?
Yeah.
They're, Barry Bonds and today's game, Paul Goldschmidt. You could say he's a 70, right? An every year all-star. They're the 40s like myself, right? I played in the big leagues for 4 years, and I was an up and down AAA big league backup pinch hitter, play late in the game stuff type guys. So for that guy, I think the level of baseball is pretty, it's pretty even here. It's just the mind, and that's why we lean a lot on our mental strength coaches, our psych department. They are awesome. And I always tell my guys, you need to make appointments. You need to see these guys. And not just necessarily in the baseball side of it, but life. I mean, I watched a team in 2019. Our mental skills coach led that team. He was unbelievable. He would meet with guys at different times. And right, during lunch, during breakfast and spring training, it was, certain guys would be meeting with him and just for 10, 15 minutes a day to kind of get themselves together, work on whatever they needed to work on. And when we first got here, guys were like, "Oh, I'm not going to go see, doctor this, doctor that." And I'm like, "Well, why not?" And they're like, "Well, because that means I'm weak." No, I said, it could unlock something for you that will take you and make you a better player and give you a chance to play at the next level. And I would tell them, major league players lean on these people. So I
Yeah.
think that part of the game is something that's not as developed, and the guys that are great will tell you that they're not afraid to go to people to help them to get better at that. Because as you said, and I've said, it's a hard game. And so your mind gets in the way a lot.
That's awesome. So Jamie Moyer is a friend of the show. I'm going to have the opportunity to get him on here. 25-year MLB veteran. He wrote a book that talks about him seeing a sports psychologist, kind of getting the mind right, and it just turning his career around. So pro ball is obviously the first time that I've ever experienced that. I was able to be a little bit more conscious of the mental preparation going into stuff, events, going into the day, going into games, all that stuff, meditation, visualization, being able to quiet the mind and kind of focus on the task, right? It's
Yeah,
big.
it's listen, it's all those things you're saying are what make you have a chance to play at the big league level, right?
Yes,
Or
sir.
get the opportunity. Um, but at our level at college, it's just surviving, man. It's hard. These kids come here as freshmen, they're thrown into a dorm with another guy. Um, it's not easy. It's not easy. They may come here with a girlfriend they didn't, this long distance, or they meet one here, they break up. I mean, it's a hard go for a while, man. You have to grow up.
Yeah.
And that's why I try to get all of our young kids get assessed by them, and they'll come, and it's if someone needs something, we try to get them as much help as we can, because obviously the baseball side of it, Ian, is what we do. We coach baseball, but I want these guys to be productive human beings after they're done playing.
Love it. We touched on the athletic ability, the difference between a top level Division One player, an MLB player. Maybe like we touched on the difference between the mental preparation, the tools available to them. What about mentality? What's the difference between a top tier Division One baseball player that is absolutely leaps and bounds better than his competition and a Major League Baseball player? Like, is that a confidence thing? Like, what's the difference between those two players mentally?
Yeah, I just think it's just they're not as developed yet. They haven't. Maybe it is they haven't failed as much as that guy has, right? We always say it in minor league managing. I remember managing rookie ball, and they'd say, "Hey, the 60-day rule, or the so many 100 at bat rule. Like, don't even talk to them about their swing or how they're catching a ground ball until they've played enough where, they can fail." Um, and that was one thing we always talked about when we brought guys to the big leagues. Like, has he ever failed?
Got it.
Right? Because if he's never failed, he's going to fail at some point in the big leagues. And can he handle it? And it's not even the physical part. Like, everybody wants to, hey, you need to switch your grip. You need to, put your elbow here. You need to step here. You go right, left when you catch, left, right. Whatever it is. Most of the time, it's not anything physical. It's mental. You know what I mean? The physical part of it's easy to change. It's just seeing if guys can handle it. And I'm sure you played with a number of people in the minor leagues that you're like, this guy is physically above everybody else, but he's never going to make it because he cannot handle struggling.
Love it.
And that's a big part of it. So some of the best talent never even plays in the major leagues. Let's face it. Or they get there and they fizzle out quick.
For
In
sure.
today's game, especially if you're given a lot of money out of the draft, right? You're not a 17th round pick. You're a top round pick. You're going to get there. They're
Yeah.
gonna force feed you there. It's just a matter of if you can handle staying there.
Ooh, that's fantastic. So obviously, the dealing with failure is big. That's the difference between the mentality.
Right.
That's gonna kind of mold you into that confident Major League Baseball player where you're at. Um, Dealing with failure, getting out of a slump. Man, what would be some advice? Anybody that's listening has either gone through a slump, has dealt with, a hitless streak, an 0 for streak, whatever. You're in a funk, man. How would you describe a way to get out of that?
Yeah, I think if you can, so mentally, obviously, it's a whole nother game, and that's why these mental skills guys are so good at kind of being able to let you throw the bat away. All the things that we always hear. Hey, it's just like a golf shot. I was playing golf the other day with my son. He's like, "We're going to stop after 9 holes." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "'Cause I can't hit my drive." I said, just focus on the next shot. You know what I mean? That's as old school as it gets, right? Just forget about the past. Okay. That's easier said than done. What I used to always do, and I like to do here too, is obviously you want to get video of when you're really good, right? And we have so many ways to capture video now from all the different systems in these stadiums that we have in our cages. So get video when you are really good. And I remember Josh Donaldson, who obviously has had a great career. When he first came to the A's in 2012, um, he struggled. We sent him back to Sacramento to AAA. He obviously came back that year, and he's never gone back to the minor leagues. But I remember he was going through a real bad time in maybe 13 or 14, and we sat him out a game. And so Bob said, "You're not going to play. I'm not going to pinch hit you. You're just going to rest." And he was in the video room the whole game, and he had like 300 clips he was watching on the video, one of the video machines. And I went in there to look at some replay or something. And I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I just came up here while we're on defense." I'm like, "I'm not worried about you being up here." I said, "What are you watching?" And he said, "I'm just watching all my best swings," and just kind of flooding his brain with good stuff. And that's kind of what we try to do is like bring him in and show him, "Hey, this is what you do when you're good." And it might be maybe you can point to look at where your hands are just in your stance.
Yeah.
They were here. Now you're flat. Why are you flat all of a sudden? You're not getting here. Something physical to take it off their mental plate. That kind of always helped me. And listen, I played in an era where it was Betamax and you had to rewind it to watch it. But I would always try to go in there and look at what I was doing different. Why am I struggling right now?
Oof.
So I try to make it a physical thing because in my era of playing, you just, guys would just say, "Oh, come on, toughen up." We didn't have the opportunity to have these great mental skills people that the kids have now. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's probably why there was so much alcoholism and drug abuse when I
I get
played
it.
in the
I get
game.
it. I
Unfortunately.
get it. Yeah. No, it's boiling over, man. Those
Yeah.
guys are in their keep. Those mental skills coaches, mental strength coaches, whatever the title is, those guys are essential. The more and more I work with younger athletes or speak with younger baseball players, they're not accustomed to any of that stuff yet, right? So if you're in high school, you haven't even obviously everybody's situation is different, but as it pertains, to sports and sports psychology and stuff like that, yeah, a high school baseball player probably won't have any experience doing any type of mental skills training, right? To kind of quiet the mind, be a better athlete, right? Be more present.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
So
there's
that
no
it makes
doubt.
a ton of sense.
But there's plenty of people to look, to go on. You'll go online. There's great, great books, the
Yeah.
old school books, Ken Revisa, all those things that these great people of the past. There's a lot of stuff you can read.
Big time. I got three more questions for you.
Okay.
All kind of like 9-hole underdog related baseball player questions. Separating yourself from the pack, your peers. This is obviously you want to play as a team. I'm just saying, how do you separate yourself from the pack, your peers, your competition, the people you're up against? How do you separate? How do you stand out? How do you get the most out of your athletic ability where you're going, man? How would you say to do that?
Yeah, I think the best thing is obviously know what you're good at, right? People always want to work on what they're not good at, right?
Mm,
You want to be as good as you can at the things you're good that you can do well. And don't always bemoan the fact you can't do something
yeah.
because you're gonna beat yourself up, and you're gonna take away from what you are good at. So I think I try to take whatever our players are really really good at, and always praise them about that. And then the stuff they're not so good at and we're trying to work on, we just work on it. We don't really talk about it. It's like I'll try to create drills on defense, if I think like we talked about earlier, if I don't think a guy's feet are good, I won't say, "Hey, you got bad feet, man. You're heavy footed." I'll say, "Hey, let's go. Let's me and you jump some rope," or let's I'll have the wake. I'll tell call over to Mikhail to our weight facility and say, "Hey, listen, let's have Joe here today. Have him jump rope before he even starts. Just
Love it.
start like a little program. He won't even realize why. It's just what's a lot of. I'll tell him so and so did this, or I did this when I was at Steve Kerr, and
Yeah.
I did this. Coach Kendall had a couple of us going with the basketball team and jump rope with them every day to see if it would help us, be better players.
Love it.
But try to create drills that you're not like saying, "Hey, you stink at this. You have a bad pre-pitch," which
Yeah.
is, I'll go out there in the infield with them during batting practice and say, show me what you do pre-pitch wise. Our third baseman might need to change what he's doing. Let me see what you do. And
Ooh.
yeah. So I
Ooh.
try to do it that way. I try not to. I think that'll separate you a little bit. And to me, I think is you are trying to we're trying like you just said it. We're a team game, but if you don't perform individually, you're probably not going to play, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, you have to realize that you know, you've got it's on you to get in the lineup. So it's not going to be an easy deal. And it's the hardest thing for me at this level because in the minor leagues, as you know, if you're on a team, you kind of know you're playing every day. You're a
Yeah.
prospect, right?
Oh, yeah.
Um, if you're a non-prospect, you're there and you're looking for the opportunity. Guy goes down, you get at bats. All of a sudden, you become a prospect.
That's right.
So I try my best until opening day here to give everybody the opportunity to get as many at bats as they can. But I will be very clear when they come back for the spring that um, as we go week by week, those at bats are going to be less and less for the guys who aren't playing.
Yeah.
But I think you always have to be ready. You always have to be ready on the physical and the mental side, and that's why as a coach, I try to work even as the season goes. Now we start playing games that count. We're blessed here because we have an extra field in the back. I'll take our guys who don't play a lot during like Pac-12 BPs and take them in the back and work with them individually just to try to keep because basically they'll tell you, well, when I'm not playing, why would you guys even want to work with me? But we
Yeah.
want to, show them love about that.
Big time. Big time. So, what have you learned, seen, experienced throughout the entirety of your baseball journey that your players, your college players, fellow college baseball players, high school players and younger haven't even experienced or had to learn about yet? What's something that baseball's taught you or that you've felt or lived through firsthand, man? Maybe a lesson, maybe an idea, whatever it is, like that these kids don't even know yet.
Yeah. I just think number one, it's amazing to me of how many great coaches, instructors, mentors that are out there. And, obviously at the pro level, I've seen so much in 20 some years.
Yeah.
But just being back in the college game for these 3 years, the level of talent at the coaching position is incredible. Throughout our conference, number one is incredible. And just the guys that we've played against in the regionals and even some of the smaller schools that come in here, just watching how their guys coach them and the positivity that a lot of them show is pretty cool. I think it's great for our game because I'm one of those people that believes it's a great game. I don't believe we're the number one sport. I really don't. I think people are more into the things that aren't. Our game takes so long, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of dead time, but it's a beautiful game, and I think it's the best. But I don't think you could say that for everybody. So I think we need to keep growing our game. Um, I've been doing it a long time as a player, coach, manager, obviously. But I just think there's more to it than just the game. You're big. The game is always going to be bigger than each player. You're never going to be as big as a game. You can look every year where you'll see the greatest player in the game this year. And in 5 to 6 years from now, they won't even be saying his name anymore.
Yeah.
So there's so much more. And you could ask anybody that's now retired, whether it's college or pro, and you probably feel the same way, I would imagine. It's the relationships that you build, right? They don't
Absolutely.
realize that. So even at the high school level, college level, build really good relationships with your teammates, with your coaches, because those are the guys, when it's all said and done, I mean, that's what you're going to miss the most.
No
And just
kidding.
enjoy that and throw yourself into it. Because in the end, it'll make you a better man, make you a better father, make you a better husband, if you do it the right way.
Amen. That's a fantastic answer. Last one I got for you, Coach. So this is the 9 hole podcast, right? 9 hole is the last hitter in the order, right? When you think about a 9 hole hitter, that's man. I got to the big leagues in the 9 hole, right? I try to embody that. We talked
Right.
about your team being, grinders. Man, what traits, qualities? What do you see? What characteristics is a 9 hole hitter to you?
Well, to me, he's probably the toughest guy in the team, because you're the ninth hitter, so you're supposed to be the worst hitter. That's not how it works for me. I mean, I want my toughest guy down there because who's at the top? Supposedly your first, second, third hitters are supposed to be your premier hitters.
Yep.
So you don't want them hitting with nobody on base. So if I can get somebody in the 9 hole that consistently can be an on base guy, whatever way it is, taking a pitch off the arm, um, bunting, being able to find different ways to get on base. He's got to have almost more on base skills than the guys, in the 7, 8 hole, 6 hole. I want that guy to be tough minded and know that he's really the second leadoff hitter for me.
Oh, it's fantastic. Chip, thank you so much for your time. Last little bonus question before I let you go here. So obviously you won a ring, College World Series ring. Obviously you have a World Series ring as well. Man, what's the difference in weight? Which one weighs more?
That's not even fair. One was 1986 here at the U of
Yeah,
A, and one's in 2019 with Washington. Man, it's a huge difference.
incredible.
Huge difference, and huge price difference. But hopefully, we can win another one here in the next few years, and we'll have another chance at this podcast, and I'll show you, and we'll weigh them. Hopefully, it'll be close.
I look forward to it. Chip Hale, head coach, Arizona Wildcats. Coach, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to seeing the continued success.
Thank you so much, Ian. Appreciate it.